I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. Work on the third floor renovation is coming along fine. These are some of the shorter of the floorboards we took out. We're prepping them here in the shop and taking them back up. Some of these boards are as wide as 22 inches, that's 56 centimeters, and 23 feet long, that's like 7 meters. It's an old house. Of course, we're all getting older. I should know, I celebrated a birthday this week. Our channel's getting older. In fact, my first video is old enough to drive. And certainly I've seen a lot of furniture in here so old that it keeps me feeling young. People often ask what's the oldest piece I've ever worked on, and I'm not sure, but this first video shows a stool from the 17th century, kind of a ubiquitous form that evolved into all the chairs we have so many of today. You'd be forgiven for thinking this is a small table, but it's actually a stool. Stools like this were very popular, like in the 17th century. Back then, each household, even rich households, may have only had 1 or 2 chairs reserved for the head of household. Everyone else sat on stools. They come in different heights. A lot of them are made of oak. This one certainly appears to be very old. It's got mortise and tenon joints held together by pegs. If you turn it over, it certainly appears to be very old. They've been making these stools for a long time, so it's tough to identify exactly how old they are. This one seems to be old, looks old. One hint might be the tongue and groove joints on this top. That might be a hint to its age. I'm going to have to try to research that. So the stool is very loose, so we want to reglue it and then figure out a good way to just sort of revive the finish a bit. It's looking a little beat. You can really see that here. Yeah, and this one doesn't go through. One of those pegs was broken, but looking in here, that where it stopped is the tenon, I believe. Boy, this one's not budging. I don't know what that is. Maybe a nail or something. Can't tell. Well, I'll finish taking out the rest of the pegs and figure that one out later. I should have removed the top first. It doesn't make that much difference, but. Just one peg, but then a couple of modern nails. These pieces that have been coming out must be shims in the tenons. I'll find out in a second. Yeah, this piece, it must have come out of there. It didn't break off of the tenon. I wonder why this extra hole is here. There's no corresponding hole. It must have just been in here somewhere. So I'll start by gluing up the two sides that have the stretcher. Yeah, this gives us a better idea of where the shims were placed. Interesting, this tenon too has multiple holes drilled in it. This shim covered that hole. Yeah, there's no corresponding holes here. Now this is that one that wouldn't come apart. So yeah, neither of these pegs came out because there's no hole on the other side. They weren't drilled through. This is where I was banging it with a dowel. I thought there was a hole there, but there wasn't. You can see all the space in this tenon. There's that big shim down there. I think all these tenons are like that. I don't know what that means. But anyway, I'll glue this without taking it apart. All right, now I'll do the other side. It's difficult to figure out where the old shims were. I'm trying to reuse them, but you know, you can, like this one lines up like that. I'll try to get it back in the same place. Okay, I'll let these two sections dry overnight, and tomorrow we'll glue the stretcher and the side rails. So I'm ending up with veneer for this one, but I know these other shims I'm going to replace, I'll definitely need that thicker stock. Good. All right, good. Let it dry overnight. Okay, so now I can put the pegs back in. You know, I glued all these joints, and almost certainly originally it was not glued. It was just held together by the pegs, but we need it to be sturdy. But I won't use glue to put the pegs back in case someone has to take them out again. I've got to drill some of these because I put new shims inside. And I'm making sure my drill bit is smaller than the outside hole here because these holes are square. I've got to try to match the peg up with the hole, the right orientation. You know, they're not square exactly. That looks about right. Now we can install the top. The top is made up of 3 boards. They've got these tongue and groove joints. They were held on originally by 4 pegs. These are modern wire nails. Now I'm not going to glue these boards up or anything. They've shrunk. If you did that, the top wouldn't fit. They were never glued together in the first place anyway. In fact, the stool was never glued together. I've glued it because it needs to be sturdy to be used. But this will just put back, the top will just put back. I've got to get these pegs and nails, you know, all lined up. I think I really have to kind of do it at the same time. The centerpiece was easy. The end pieces are a little tougher to get lined up. Well, I can see where, you know, the nails hold, where the nails go. I think I'll scrape a little bit of the gras doux off these joints, back these nails up a little bit, and then just get this thing back to where it goes. Maybe I can back the pegs out a little bit too. Try it. I don't want the peg to come out. I don't want to lose that orientation with the hole. That's what I was afraid of. I'm not going to back these nails out. I'm going to glue this chip down right now before I go any further. I won't have to leave the clamp on for long. By the time I get the other pieces ready, I can take it off. So this nail hole, quite obvious, goes there. Now I'm not finding the nail hole here, but apparently the nail went right into the joint. So I'll loosen this peg. I've got one nail started. I'll get the peg started, and then this nail can go wherever it wants to go. Well, the peg wouldn't line up, which made me realize that had I turned this whole thing upside down, I would have realized that this section goes over here. Same situation though, got a nice nail hole here, and then this nail goes into the joint. So same thing, get this nail hole, get this peg, and then that will end up wherever it wants to be. Yeah, just want to get this started because I still have to get the other sections on. Okay, I still got to get the center pegs lined up. Well, I can see now I made a classic mistake. When I glued the base up, well, it wanted to be square, and I checked and made sure it was square. But I think it was never square before, because now these boards won't line up. So I'm going to take these side pieces off, push the nails through, get rid of those so they aren't in the way, and keep these two pegs. They seem to be located just right, and I'll relocate these boards so that it lines up. So when I reinstall this top, the peg's going to be in a slightly different place. So I've got to plug that hole. Now's an opportunity to close this gap if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave a gap. It's January, the humidity is in the 20s, so you leave a little gap there. Maybe it'll be tight in the summertime. All right, so now what to do about the nail holes? Obviously we could always fill the nail holes, which I will do, but in the meantime, because these end sections are just held by one peg, they can pivot. More often than not, I put nails back into nail holes if I think they might do some good. I mean, why not? The hole's there already. In this case, they are doing some good. They're going to keep these two end pieces from pivoting and keep the crack in the middle even. Now, everywhere there's a peg, if there's any space around the peg, I'm going to fill it in with a wax stick. As hard as I tried to get these pegs back in, there's still quite a few of them, little spaces around here and there. And I'll just use a rub-in wax stick, same kind you get at your local hardware store. On the top I'll use these low heat burn-in sticks that I usually use with the hot knives. Alright, and now for the final, I'm going to wax it. I'm going to use this Brie wax because I happen to have, it's dark brown, and I figure that's going to help this oak and help this. I'm going to apply it with steel wool. So, there you have it. A really nice 17th century stool. And of course it's going to be used as a table, but it's nice to know you can sit on it if you need to. And basically, there wasn't really anything wrong with it. I just took it apart, put it back together. I did glue it together so that it's sturdy, because it was not sturdy at all. And a nice wax, and I think it looks pretty good. And the second video is an early 18th century looking glass that came in for repair after falling off a wall. Enjoy these videos, and if you like them, please subscribe, share. I appreciate it. This is a really nice antique mirror frame, Queen Anne style. It's probably from before 1750. It's a period antique. It fell from the wall and sort of broke apart, but not bad. It broke at the joints. They must have been loose already. We have the moldings that came off. We have the back, which is the original back, and a nice piece of old glass. It's made of walnut, and it's actually, except for the obvious things that have happened to it, it's in really good shape. So I need to re-glue the frame and glue the moldings back on again. So one of the first things I need to do here is take this apart. This is coming apart. You can see these old nails here. I want to try to keep those nails. I also see evidence of what appears to be a spline. So I've got to work these other joints apart and figure out exactly what I've got here. The next step will be to remove the new nails that are here. I think there's just a few in these top joints. Now I'm going to scrape as much as I can. I'm going to scrape around the old nails, see what glue I can get off of there. Alright, I've scraped as much glue as I can, did pretty good. Now I'm going to glue it back together. I've left the original nails in place, and I'm going to use those to guide these back together. I'm going to start the assembly. When I get them close, then I'll put the glue in there and I'll clamp it together. If you remember, there's these little splines here just in the bottom of the frame. I'm not going to attempt to replace those. They're really small. They did the spline, then veneered over the edge, so that would be a problem. I don't think they do much good. After the glue up, I'm going to add some support to the outside corners here. Okay, that was a tough glue up. Clamps get in the way of each other. I also had to make sure this is square. It's really square. It's good. All the joints are together, so I think I'm good. Okay, I've let this set up overnight. All right, this seems it seems nice and strong, and it's nice and flat. So it's great. I think the next thing I want to do, I'm going to glue some very thin braces on the exterior of these corners, just to give it a little strength. Because the back, when I go to put the back on, that sits inside the frame. The back doesn't really help this frame. So I feel the need to put something across here. It'll just be some superficial, thin pieces of wood in the corners. So I've got some 1/8" maple scrap I'll use to cut these little corner pieces. So the theory is that these little triangles will give some support to this frame, but they're just superficial. If If anybody ever wanted to take them off in the future, they could. Before I start gluing on these moldings on the other side, I should have done this when I had it apart, but I want to remove, there's little blocks of wood that held in the glass and nails that held in the wooden back. And I'm going to remove those right now. Alright, now I can start. I have all these pieces which came off. Got to figure out where they go, and then I can scrape the old glue off and glue them down. Now you may have noticed on the molding on the frame that there's a lot of sections with spaces between the sections like these. And that's because the grain of the molding runs perpendicular to the grain of the frame. The molding has shrunk up, leaving all these spaces. So as I glue these pieces back, you'll notice that I'm going to leave spaces on either side, just like it was, before these came off. So everything looks good. Now I'm going to take a damp rag and just go over the frame, looking for any hide glue that needs to be cleaned off. Okay, before I go any further on the frame, I'm going to turn it over and install the glass and the back. As I turn this over, I realized there are some support pieces glued to the back of this upper section that were missing when it came in. But I need to find some thin strips of wood and strips of wood that can bend a little bit with this cupped top section and glue those on. I realized too when I turned this over that I had this little piece of wood taped to the back, and it came from this corner right here. When the wood, this edge is veneered, and when the frame itself shrunk some, it pushed this area out, and that came off. But I think I can get it right back there where it came from. All right, I found some nice pieces of 1/8" pine in the scrap wood box. And I've cut them to fit in these 3 spaces. So I'll just scrape the old glue and glue them down. So I've still got to put some stain on my new pieces, but first I've talked it over with the owner of the mirror, and all these cracks between these sections of molding, I'm going to fill those with a little wax. It's called low heat burn and stick. It's just a hard wax that you melt into these cracks. Alright, the cracks look good. The wax I used is a pretty good neutral color. As I hold this up and kind of look at it, though, I see some places where the wax looks a little light, so I'll use a fine grain marker like this one to touch them up a bit, just in some areas. I don't really know if this is the original piece of glass or not. It's certainly very old. Silvering looks very old. But I think the original glass might have been a lot thinner than this piece. This is kind of a heavy piece of glass, but I don't know that much about it. So there we have it. This is a really nice 18th century Queen Anne looking glass, and of course it fell off the wall because the old wire in the back broke. So I re-glued the frame and re-glued a lot of these pieces of molding around the perimeter of the glass. I think it looks pretty good.